Hello guys, it's Miss A again. Our video today is going to cover area of triangles. We did cover this right before we were out for spring break. This was the last unit we covered with area of triangles, trapezoids, rectangles, all that stuff. So if you're looking at your choice board, the video is going to help you today with geometry and measurement. And again, this is focusing on triangles. So it'll definitely help with F1 Part 1. And then F2, part 2 is going to be rectangular prisms. That is just volume equals length times width times height. So this video is not going to cover it, but that's how you do volume of rectangular prism. This one is drawing. I wouldn't focus on that one for this video, but it'll also help for F3 because F3 solely focuses on area of a triangle. Okay, so this video will help with some of your F skills. All right, so here we go, area of a triangle. So first of all, if you were looking at a formula chart, the formula they're going to give you for area of a triangle is A equals 1/2 times the base times the height. Remember, when everything is touching, it does mean multiplication. So 1/2 times the base times the height. The formula that I prefer to work with is the base times height divided by 2. Multiplying by 1/2 is the same exact operation as dividing by 2 instead. Okay, so these formulas are exact same. It's just a little bit, I think this one's easier because it's dividing by 2 instead of multiplying by a fraction. So I will always refer to this one, base times height divided by 2. Some of my kids also said, well, can we just change that fraction into a decimal and then multiply by 0.5? That's perfectly fine as well. If that's what you want to do 0.5 times the base times the height. It really doesn't matter. There are several different ways you can solve for the area. Here's a couple different examples of what the triangle might look like. Here we have our base is at the bottom and then the height is how tall it is. That's pretty basic. It's how most triangles are going to look. You also notice right here, there's this little box that represents that the base and the height are perpendicular. They form a right angle. So that is very important to remember that the base and the height always form a right angle. You can notice over here, there's no right angle here and there's no right angle there. So that side is not a base or a height. I've also told my kids in class before that we never use a slanted side, at least in 6th grade. Never use a slanted side when it comes to a triangle. All right, and then over here, this one looks a little bit different because it has this dotted line going down the middle. Anytime we see a dotted line, no matter what the shape is, if you see a dotted line, it's going to be the height for sure. So the height is here in the middle. The base is at the bottom. Again, you can see right here, it has that little right angle symbol. The height and the base form a right angle. So those two are the base and the height. Base and the height always form the perpendicular and they form a right angle. And just a heads up, these are not drawn to scale on any picture that I've drawn. So if it looks like it doesn't match, I'm sorry. This is just me drawing them by hand. So this is actually like example F1 from your choice board. They gave you a sentence and it says for you to draw and label the shape and then find the area. So we're going to do one of those first. It says a triangle has a base that measures 6.4 meters and a height that measures 4.5 meters. So we have a couple options. You can draw a triangle that looks like this, or you can draw a triangle that looks like that. You can draw any type of triangle you really want. Doesn't matter. So sorry. I need to get something to hold my camera with so I'm not holding it with my hand. I'm going to draw one that looks like this. So I'm going to start with just a regular triangle. I'm going to go ahead and label where my right angle is because I know my base and my height have to be the two sides that form it. And then it says the base is 6.8. So the base, to me, when I think of base, I think of the bottom. So I'm going to say 6.8 meters. And then the height is obviously how tall it is. So that's this length right here, not the slanted side, 4.5 meters. And the question is wanting us to find the area of the triangle. Okay, so we're going to use, again, this is what's given to you, 1/2 times the base times the height. I don't like that fraction, so I change it to base times height divided by 2. It's the same exact process, okay? Let's get started. So we have the formula A equals BH divided by 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is identify what I have. We already know that the base, where am I going to write it? Right here. Base equals 6.8, and the height equals 4.5. So those are the two values that I'm plugging into my formula. So right here, I'm gonna have A equals my base, which is 6.8, times my height, which was 4.5. You can see here that I'm using parentheses to represent multiplication. I don't want to just put the numbers side by side because then it would be confusing of which number is which. So you put parentheses around one of the numbers. 6.8 times 4.5, and the whole thing gets divided by 2. All right, so I'm going to actually show you a little bit of a shortcut that I think is helpful in this case. Because these two numbers are decimals, I don't like multiplying decimals. If I can avoid it, these also are kind of big. I don't, I want to try to get the numbers smaller. So one thing I'm going to do first, before I multiply the base times the height, which I could do 6.8 times 4.5 and then divide. I'm going to pick one of these numbers and divide it by 2 first so my numbers get smaller. And I'm going to pick 6.8 because it's even. 4.5 divided by 2 wouldn't give me a remainder of 0, or I had to do a little bit extra work. This one I know would because the last digit is an 8. So I'm going to circle those two, and I'm going to go ahead and divide them first. 6.8 divide by 2. Bring the decimal up, and now I can do my division. 2 goes into 6 3 times, which is 6. Bring down your 8, and then 2 goes into 8 4 times. With a remainder of 0, so I can stop. So this, when I divided it, I got 3.4. So A equals 3.4. And now the only thing left is to multiply it by that number I haven't used, which is 4.5. So it still has to multiply decimal by decimal, but at least I've got 3.4 instead of 6.8. So now we're going to just line up my numbers. Remember, when you're multiplying two decimals, you do not have to line up the decimals. You can, this one does just automatically, but you don't have to because we have to count place values here in the end. So we're going to start with just multiply 34 times 45 like normal. Forget the decimals even there. 5 times 4, 20. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 makes 17. Put a 0. Cross off the 2, cross off the 5. This is a placeholder because I'm now multiplying by the 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 1 makes 13. And then add everything up. 0, 13, 3, 4, 5, and then 1. And now to know where my decimal place goes, I don't drag it straight down. I have to look. I've got one number after the decimal here and one here. So because I have one number in each place value, or one number after each decimal, I've got to add those up. So 1 plus 1 makes 2. So that's how many times I'm going to move my decimal. Starting from the back, I'm going to move it once, twice. So my answer is 15.30, but I could leave that off and just put 15.3. And this was measured in meters. Oh, sorry. Squared. And there you go. Okay, so we did base times height divided by 2. I did a little shortcut, divided by 2 first to make my number smaller. The car was loud, hopefully. Y'all cannot hear that. Divided by 2 first, got 3.4, and then I multiplied by 4.5. Okay, and guys, the whole purpose of me making these videos is you're able to stop it, rewind it, say, I don't know what she just said. Go back and rewatch it, watch it 2 or 3 times if you need to. Do this, if you want to practice doing this on your own, pause the video before I get an answer and then go back and do it. You can always do that. That's what's nice about these YouTube videos. And that's the reason I'm making them. And so you can rewatch them, pause them, do whatever you need to do. Okay, I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier for y'all. Oh, this is all new to us. 15.3 square meters is my answer. Remember, area is always measured in square units. So you're always going to have an exponent of 2 and then whatever the unit is, yards, feet, inches, whatever it may be. All right, let's do a couple more. All right, so here we go. We have a triangle. Again, these are not drawn to scale, so bear with me. My formula that I'm using is A equals base times height divided by 2. So here we can see that our height is that dotted line. So this is my H equals H. And my base is the one at the bottom. And those are the numbers I need to plug in. So A equals base, which was 6, times the height, which was 5, and the whole thing gets divided by 2. So I'm not going to do the shortcut here or the divide first like we did in the previous example because these numbers are somewhat small. So I'm just going to do exactly what it says. I'm going to do base times height first. So A equals my 6 times 5, which is 30. So that equals 30, and then we divide by 2. And then 30 divided by 2, if you need to, go ahead and just Tybo that, top and bottom out. Remember, Tybo. Goes in 1 time. Bring down your 0, and then 2 goes into 10 5 times. So we get our answer of A equals 15. And I didn't put a value here, I just put 5. So you could put U for units and then squared, just so you have an actual unit. Well, again, we could have done the shortcut. 6 divided by 2 gets me 3, and then 3 times 5 gets me 15. All right, number 3. A equals base times height divided by 2. So here we have two sides that are the same. It doesn't really matter. This side is slanted, so we wouldn't use it anyway, but there's no number there. So it doesn't matter which one is which, honestly, because you're just multiplying the base and the height. But I would consider this my height because that's how tall it is. So H, and this would be my base. Even though it's at the top, if you were to flip it, it would be at the bottom. So we have our base and our height, which are the same numbers, so we're going to plug them in. A equals base 8 times the height, which is 8, and the whole thing gets divided by 2. Again, I'm going to do exactly what it says. I'm going to multiply 8 times 8, which gets me 64, and then I'm going to divide the whole thing by 2. From there, we're going to Tybo, top in. Oh, paper's moving. Top in, bottom out. 2 goes into 6 3 times, which is 6. Remainder of 0. Bring down your 4. And then 2 goes into 4 2 times. We have a remainder of 0. There's nothing left, so we are done. A equals 32. This was measured in yards, and it's squared. Again, the shortcut would have been, I consider it a shortcut, is picking this one of these numbers and dividing by 2 first. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and then multiply by the 8. 4 times 8 is 32. Just want to show you that there are 2 ways to solve it. And then our last example here is going to be this triangle. It gets a little bit more complicated. You can notice they gave us 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. Remember that I told you we never use a slanted side. Now here, obviously my drawing is not perfect, so that might be kind of hard to tell. We do know for a fact that we're going to use the dotted line because we know the dotted line is always our height, always. And then if you're confused over which side is your base, remember that the height and the base form a right angle. So you can see the right angle is right here at the bottom. So this side and this side form your right angle, so this has to be the base. Again, these are slanted, so we wouldn't use them. We would never use a slanted side. Okay, so we have 13.4 and 11. So A equals base times height divided by 2. So we're going to plug those values in. A equals base, which was 11, times the height, which was 13.4. And the whole thing gets divided by 2. Okay, so this is like the first example. I'm not going to multiply 11 times 13.4 first because that's going to get me it's a 3-digit number by a 2-digit. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to pick one of them and divide it by 2 first. Now, you notice here, if I divide 11, 2 doesn't go into 11 evenly. I'm going to get point something. I'm going to get 0.5. I'm going to get 5.5. So I'm not going to pick that one. I'm going to pick this one because the last digit isn't even. So I'm going to pick those 2 and divide it first. I'm going to do that right here. So top in 13.4, divide by 2, drag the decimal up. All right, 2 can't go into 1. 2 can go into 13 6 times, which is 12. Subtract, you get 1. And then bring down your 4. 2 goes into 14 7 times. Decimal was already there. So 6.7, but that's not my answer. So A equals, I haven't done anything with the 11 yet, so it stays there, and I have to multiply it by my new number of 6.7. So I still have to multiply with the decimal, but at least it's 6.7 compared to 13.4. All right, so we're gonna line up those numbers. I'm gonna put 6.7 on top because it's got the bigger digits, times 11. Again, notice I don't have decimals lined up here. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to put a 0.0. All right, so I get, this is easy. 1 times 7, 7, paper's moving. 1 times 6, cross that off, put a placeholder, 7, 6, then add everything up. 7, 13, 7. And then here I just had one number after the decimal, so all I have to do is move it one time. So my area equals 73.7. Again, I didn't have a unit here, so I can just put units squared. And that is how you solve for the area of a triangle. Okay, again, we picked the shortcut here just because the numbers were kind of big. You could always do the shortcut and divide one of the numbers by 2 first and then multiply. You're only doing 2 steps, multiplying and dividing by 2. That's all you're doing. All right, so hopefully these examples were helpful. Feel free to go back and rewatch it, pause it, whatever you're out to do. All right, guys, I miss y'all. Let me know if y'all have any more questions. But y'all have a great day. Bye.